Happy Monday. Hello, Diane. Good to see you. Broska, hello.
Happy Monday.
Thank you.
Broska, that's nice.
Candace on the road. Good to see you, Candace. Guy, always a pleasure. Kathy, good to see you as well. Looks like we got people from all over the state tonight, so welcome. We'll get started in just another minute. Deanne, you ready to jump in? Give us an update for this week?
I am. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm in Mexico for a few more days and I'm back to the real world. So looking forward to hopefully seeing a few of you in person. This week, interest rates, we expect that there may be some additional changes, some volatility this week. The consumer price index reports tomorrow. So that's the inflation number. So we may see it either go up or down depending on what that number does. And interest rates this week, you could look at FHA, VA, any Govy loans about 6. Conventional loans are back moving up again about in the 6.5 category. Jumbos around 6. So that's my report for the day. Thank you.
Awesome, Deanne. Thank you so much for the update. So we don't know if it's going down. Do you have any thoughts? Do you think it's going down? Are we to put some bets on this one, Deanne?
Well, I think where we all want that number to come down. So we're all trying to think, but I think there's a little feeling in the bond market because of the way we're pricing. I think they have a little fear it might go up. So just expect some volatility, some additional volatility here for the next, probably month or two.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, you know what? That's what we have to do in real estate. We have to adapt to change. So no worries there. I think at this point, we are getting hit from all angles as far as buyers and sellers, at least from what I can tell over the last couple of weeks. People wanting to price their home, and we've got the spring market right ahead of us. So perfect timing to have this call about CMA and pricing tonight. So thanks, Deanne, for the update. And we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. My name is Rachelle Wilhite, designated broker of Best Choice Realty, and we've got agents from all over the state tonight. So welcome. If you're dialing in from Idaho or for Washington or even in Yakima, we're happy to have you. We are growing leaps and bounds right now. We have acquired quite a few agents in the last month or two. I know all of you are getting recruiting phone calls, but that is the season. They're looking at ways of cutting costs. And so we have a great opportunity here at Best Choice Realty to run your own business and get education and also save a lot of money. So really appreciate all your support out there and helping to grow and build our vision across the state of Washington and into Idaho. Tonight, we're going to talk about comparative market analysis. If you can go to the next slide, Shannon, and talk about something that actually happened recently. So I like case studies. So tonight's about a case study. Email came in a couple weeks ago. What is the best way to get value estimates on my dad's 5 rental properties? So they're out there, the buyers and sellers, looking at ways to cut costs or to work with true professionals. Her big question in her email, literally came in just a couple weeks ago, was, is Zillow accurate? And I think we all laugh at this because we know clearly it's not. But still the consumers will be going to places like Zillow to see if their home or to get their home valuation. She said, my dad is moving into hospice care and we don't know how long he has left. I know I have to get estimates on all his remaining properties after he passes away. I'm looking for official values for his estate. I want you to kind of clue into the word official and accuracy, 2 very, very important words that I think as listing agents, we need to consider. If you were to do this for me, what is the cost of that? So we're definitely in the engagement territory. Thanks. So you guys can see how I responded. You can go to the next slide, Shannon. So again, you always want to approach an email like that with, again, just human to human. Computers can't do this, you guys. They don't know how to do this well. First off, I'm so sorry you have to start the year off and helping your dad transition into hospice. It brings back a flood of memories. Zillow and Redfin tend to be way off these days with all the layoffs in both of these tech companies. In fact, one client I'm currently working with found the estimate from Redfin was 90,000 spread from Zillow. That's a big difference. So we've got two computers that are battling for data, and they're both laying off some of their human beings. And so in the middle of that, here we've got an actual client who is looking to get real important information. I said to her, I'll be happy to be a resource for you. I'll do the estimates complimentary since you are a past client. So she was just looking for kind of a quick estimate. So you want to really clarify, and we did on the phone, what we offer as real estate brokers and what we're tasked to do. So what I asked for is just, I need the addresses with a short note of any recent updates or upgrades that he did to the property since his ownership. And if unknown, let me know that too. So I had to do 5, what you would call CMAs, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, for this client. And so it can be done pretty quickly, but you obviously have to communicate what you're doing and how you're going to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Let's go to the next slide, Jan. So right away, when I have a client like that who's asking me about valuations and definitely is wanting to know a bit more about the property, that is a perfect cue for you to contact your title officer or your sales rep that works at the title department and have them pull whatever information they are willing to pull for you. And it can be done very quickly. Every title company that I work with can get me just some basic information within 15 minutes. If your title company cannot provide that to you within 15 minutes, you need to find a different title company. There's no reason why they cannot get that information to you. And again, it's free to you because you're a licensed real estate agent and they want to work with you when you actually have a real one, when you actually have a real listing that you're working on. They want that business and they want to help and support you in that business. If you're working, the only exception I would say to that 15-minute rule would be if you are working on a commercial. Commercial does take longer to provide some of that basic information. They can sometimes take a few days to supply that with you versus 15 minutes. So a regular residential land can certainly get that to you right away. Now, to answer the question, online valuations, I want you to kind of keep this in the back of your mind. They are incorrect. I have found time and time again that it have to be a very cookie cutter kind of situation for an online valuation to be completely 100% correct. And I have yet to find one that is 100% correct. But it does allow for some good talking points. So if the client, in my case, had gone to Zillow, she already knew what Zillow had said. I wanted to compare really quickly, and there are CMA programs that will do this for you. But at a glance, I wanted to, as I put this together for her, I did the property addresses, I looked at what Zillow is saying, what Redfin is saying, and then what the market value is saying. And if you can just look at mine that I just did a couple weeks ago, I think it was last week or the week before, I've lost track of time, but you can see Redfin and Zillow are quite different. On that property, they're 30,000, 20,000. On the third one on the sheet there, pretty close. But again, it didn't take into account a busy street and then how active and the property rent rolls and how long that property could be rented. That's a very good assessment. So again, Zillow and Redfin aren't able to make those deductions, aren't able to make those adjustments that were done to this property. The other one, about $40,000 spread, but you know what? It actually happened to be wrong. They're using condos and garages, and that cannot be done correctly. So I made that in my notes. So as you can see, a human being is able to do a better job at that algorithm than even Zillow and Redfin. But it does give you some good talking points. And certainly we are having those talking points and exchanging emails back and forth. So tonight, over the next 20 minutes, I want to kind of go through the process that I go through when I'm looking at kind of defining what is the competition doing? What am I seeing from my vantage point? And I can tell you a lot of bad habits. I'm seeing people that are just taking stuff off of the MLS and they're shooting it off to their client and expecting that, oh, they're going to just list with me because that data that I'm pulling from the MLS is correct. I see people going through some basic CMA training and having some really good discussion with the instructor because they're showing how to use Realist and they're showing how to pull a CMA on the Northwest MLS. And I'm seeing all of these varying kind of tactics of how to pull comparable properties and honestly not doing it a very good job. So the competition, I would say the top performers, those that are basically doing a CMA for their clients and actually winning at the listing front, they're putting together a very organized, thoughtful presentation that includes more of a market proposal rather than a CMA or a comparative market analysis. So what do you tell us? I'm going to go into that in a minute, but what do these words mean? I'm just going to go through, because some of you are newer to the business or maybe needs a refresher on what these words mean. They mean different things to different people, and there also is some talking points that are associated with each one. Shannon, jump in at any time if I don't cover what I intended to cover tonight. But a CMA stands for Comparative Market Analysis, and it's a component of a thorough analysis that's done for price. So if a client asks you for a CMA or a quick CMA, you can pump that out pretty quickly. The accuracy, though, could be challenged depending on where you're pulling that data from. So we'll go into that in a minute. A competitive analysis is a little bit different than a comparative analysis. And as the market starts to transition, you will need to consider the competitive analytics. Say, for example, I put a listing on the market and I was going to in December, but when we looked at the competitive analysis, we noticed that several of the units in this condo complex were dropping their prices substantially. That was impacting the competitive nature of the position that our condo was going to take. Our condo was in a different floor. It had a balcony. It had a view, where some of the other units in the complex were doing like what we would consider fire cells. And so our competitive analysis did not look good for my client who was going to put a condo on the market, and he had purchased it for cash. So he's not in a hurry. So that competitive analysis was something that you do with active properties to understand where you should properly price your home. Many of you have not been trained in competitive analysis because we have not been having to train on that, because we have not been in a marketplace. We usually could just not even do a CMA, put a price on the market, and let the competitive analysis be the buyers who are vying for that property because the lack of inventory that appears in the marketplace. So a competitive analysis looks at active comparable properties that are within the vicinity of your property, and they're properly analyzed to determine where you should set your price. And that was done a lot after 2008. In fact, we did a lot of a competitive analysis in order to deal with short sales and foreclosures as we entered that recession, that recessionary market that we were in 2008. So if you joined real estate in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, you didn't have to do a lot of CMAs or competitive analysis. And so you probably don't understand what those words mean. AVM is something that has popped up since the age of the internet. It's been debated about how accurate Zillow and Zestimates were. AVM is another word for a Zestimate. It's an automated valuation model. So it's basically an algorithm that's put together by a computer, AKA could be Zillow, it could be others that have entered that market space as well. And they have, in essence, compiled some data, albeit it might not be the right data, and then they basically average that and put together a range, an automated valuation model that says, and how accurate, it might be 80% accurate, it might be 70% accurate. CoreLogic puts together an AVM for every single property. So if you use Realist, if you use that tool to assess, comparable properties and give you kind of a ballpark, an AVM could be what the seller needs. In my case, that may be what she's looking for, but as we knew that I knew her dad was actually getting closer to actually passing away and them wanting to sell some of their properties, an AVM might be okay for the 5 properties at that time. But when he does pass away, we will need to do a full valuation and actually do a good job at a full market proposal so that they understand how to properly price their property so they can move them. The online valuation, another word for an AVM, just a online calculator that's used based on some properties, and then they take an algorithm and just apply that. An appraisal is done by an actual licensed appraisal. So consumers sometimes think that what we do is an appraisal. So you need to probably educate them on what the difference is between what you do, a market valuation, and what an appraisal does. It's not much different if you do a full market proposal. An appraisal is looking at actives, competitive analysis. It's looking at all of the adjustments. It's actually comparing the marketplace. It's looking at, is it a declining market? Is it a good market? Is it a bad market? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? An appraisal goes through that level of detail and scrutiny and looks at the comparable properties and actually measures and verifies the square footage. When we are doing, in contrast, a CMA or a full market proposal, we as real estate agents that are licensed have been into the properties and can make the appropriate adjustments to give a client, a seller, a proper, it almost is like an appraisal, except they're not paying for the appraisal. They're getting the data in a way that we will hopefully get the business so that we can actually do the listing and price the home so that it will then appraise. 95% of the properties out there require an appraisal. So why would you not, if you're a seller, ask your listing agent to provide you with a full market proposal, much like an appraiser would do on their property before they price. However, we haven't had to ask for that because the market has dictated, just put the house on the market, make it all pretty, get some good photos, and all of a sudden you've got buyers standing at your door. That's not the case right now. We are having to do some analysis. So there are companies like Cloud CMA that will put together a quick and dirty, that's a term that they use on their analysis. A Cloud CMA is something that's done to properly present and take the data from the MLS or the matrix or from whatever source that you want to put into the Cloud CMA, and they'll make it a nice, pretty presentation. That's what Cloud CMA would do. Be careful though, because sometimes that data is being used inappropriately. So be careful with that you are actually putting that data together and putting it into a proprietary system that will then get to your seller and you've established that relationship. My concern with using CMA or tools like that is, what are they going to do with that data? That data is very rich, and it does take a lot of knowledge to be able to put that data into a proper presentation. They always say in agents, they use the word comps. I don't want you using the word comps. The consumers don't know what comps mean. We do a slang. It's a slang term that we use. I'd rather have you say what we were going to look for is look at the market, put a market proposal together that takes into account competitive properties, properties that are on the market, properties that are within the vicinity of your property. And we look at your property and we bid in your property, unlike some of these online calculators, to properly evaluate your property so we can set the right price or help you set the right price for your property. So again, be very careful about saying your house is compared to like this property. They don't want to hear that. This is their place where they live. This is the home. This is the place where they've put a lot of money and time in. And so if you talk like, oh, I'm going to pull some comps, and they're going to be totally checked out, you guys. You want to really humanize their experience and really understand from what they're looking to get out of their property and ask questions about what they're looking for, just like that seller was asking for, accurate data. Those are some key words you want to be clued into, and then you want to provide them with something of value. How long does it take to prepare? Well, the quick and dirty could take me 15, 20 minutes, but this seller obviously knew her dad was dying. And I told her it would take me approximately 5 to 7 hours to pull all of the information that she would need to make a good decision. And she valued that. She's like, absolutely, Rachelle, we will be using you when we list one of our rental properties, and we'll probably be listing them in a period of time. So I was looking at that relationship as a way, to explain to her what I do for the price. And when do you give the price to the seller? If she's not going to be listing her property anytime soon, you don't want to give her a price range that she can then go and take and shop with another competitor. You want to give them a range, and you want to give them a reason and you don't want to give them all your work either. That would be a rookie mistake, to spend 5 hours in preparing a full market valuation for her properties. And then for her just to take all the work that I gave and go work with another company, with XYZ company. So you want to be very careful about how you present your work and how you price your work, and when you give that work to the seller. I never give my full market proposal to the seller, all encompassing, unless they are willing to sign a listing agreement with me. Am I willing to give a price range for the seller? Absolutely, but only if they're willing to sign an agreement with me. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Jim. So what is a market proposal? You're like, what is Rachelle talking about? I thought I just have to do a CMA. Well, the sellers the clients, they're expecting more from you. If you're a licensed real estate broker and you've taken classes to renew your license and you know how to use all of these different resources and technology platforms to come up with a valuation, then they're expecting a lot more. And are you really delivering this in a thoughtful, organized manner? I would beg to challenge you that most of you on this call are probably not, because you haven't had to. So my hope is that over the next couple months, you will take advantage of some of the courses that we're offering at Best Choice Realty. We are going to do some hybrid work in teaching you guys how to properly price and do a very detailed CMA. But these are the 5 things that I include in a very detailed market proposal. Is number 1, you're going to include a market snapshot of supply and demand, some market trends, days on market, demographics of the neighborhood. Some of this information your title company can provide you with. Other information you can easily get from your MLS, but that should be included in your market proposal. It shows the client that you are experienced, that you are local, and that you are knowledgeable about their particular property. It also shows that you have the ability of understanding graphs and can properly advise them of when to go live on the market or when to maybe hold off. They will trust you even more if you tell them, hey, hold off on that condo. Let's not go live on that market. Let's wait for that property to sell so that that's a valid comparable property. And I can tell that through a story where I can actually properly price your home and use that as a comparable property. But I can share that you spent $20,000 in upgrades or painted all the interior or replaced all the cabinetry versus the other one that did not, and look at their days on market. And we have to understand those graphs and be able to approach the detailed proposal with number 1, with a market knowledge summary. The other thing, number 2, would be a detailed CMA. Some of you are doing a sloppy job. I'm just going to say it. I've reviewed several in the last week. A detailed CMA would need to include the correct comparable properties that actually make the most sense. Some of you are including property types that don't match. So for example, you might have done a condo and you included a townhome. Those are 2 separate different types of properties, and an appraiser would not do that or make that type of comparison, and nor should you. So don't make the mistake that some of those online calculators are making by comparing a condo to a house. I clearly saw that done, and it was like crazy that I actually caught them doing that. So, and Redfin and Zillow actually on that particular house, for whatever reason, calculated a condo, 2 condos, in fact, that jeopardized the seller's position. If she would have just listed with the Zillow, it would have been totally off, and she would have been down the stream trying to figure out why her condo was, or why her house was not selling, when in fact it was completely improperly priced. Number 3, you're going to adjust the comparable properties. I see too many novice agents they think they're putting a detailed CMA together because they're finding actives, pendings, and solds and putting it, just basically averaging them out, when in fact they have not done a thorough job by actually adjusting those comparable properties to take into account subjective or objective factors. There is a proper way of doing those adjustments when you're comparing the properties correctly. And it does take some time. I will say that it takes a human being to actually make those adjustments and make them correct. And this is how I explain it when I was talking to this seller. It's like, Zillow has not been inside your house. They don't know that you replaced the roof, that you did some of these work. And so we take that detailed information that you give me, or that I tour when I go through the property, and make those a proper objective adjustments. And then subjectively, I can walk through and I can do a subjective adjustment, because I know that $20,000, the carpet has all been replaced, or just the way it smells in comparison to the other house. One has a smoke smell and one does not. And that does affect the condition or the subjective pricing that needs to be taken on that particular comparable property. That's not something that Zillow or Redfin can actually take into account, nor any of the automated valuation models that are out there. Sometimes they don't even take into account that it's on a busy street, and that can be an advantage in some cases or a disadvantage in other cases, or the road noise, or there's construction going on. That's like you have this massive road that they're enlarging and you hear the road noise. There is some adjustments that have to be made for that. So you got to know your marketplace really well and actually maybe even tour some of the comparable properties on number 3 to make the appropriate adjustments. So it's not for the faint-hearted and it's not for the novices. You will need some help in doing the proper adjustments. Number 4, and a lot of people are like, why are we doing number 4? We didn't have to before. Well, now we are in some marketplaces. Up on the Kitsap Peninsula, we are seeing some more inventory popping up. In my neighborhood, not so much yet, but it's coming. So as the market starts to shift more into a buyer's market where there are more active comparable properties, you will need to properly analyze the active comparables and provide your sellers with a sheet to discuss the competition and how to properly price your home in comparison to the competitive properties out there. And then the last one in your market proposal is, are you including a net sheet? Does your seller actually know what they're going to take away with the price range? And I always do the net sheet off the worst case scenario so that they know when they get there at the very end, when everything's said and done, they can say, well, Rachelle told me so. This is what it is. And they can use that with their lenders if they're buying another property, and they can use that as a baseline to go from, so that we're not over promising and under delivering. That's the worst that you can have happen. That we promise them all these things, and then when the reality is we're doing price drop after price dropped, and then we don't get what we need to purchase the next home. So to kind of conclude tonight's, what data appears in the CMA? Well, a CMA, if you're just looking at a CMA generally, it's just your actives, pendings, and solds. And in the past, we haven't had to provide even actives and pending, and good luck finding pendings. So data that has appeared in the CMA that I've reviewed have been often at least 3 to 6 sold properties. That's what a CMA, a comparative market analysis, would be. We are looking for a little bit deeper knowledge at Best Choice Realty, where we want to review the subject property and compare it and update it with the seller guiding us along the way, so that we are getting proper pricing done correct the first time. We also are having to locate comparable properties using an MLS feature sheet. If you want that takeaway, the MLS does provide appraisers with an MLS feature sheet where they can actually compare and take notes on it. Appraisers actually use that MLS sheet. So if you do want that, let me know. I'll be happy to provide that. Send me a quick email. I'd be happy to have Shannon or one of my assistants go ahead and get that over to you. So that's a takeaway from tonight's session. You also want to discuss the proximity. So if you're looking for a CMA and I just want to see if this is priced right, definitely look at your solds, definitely look at pendings, and definitely look at actives, but look at the proximity to the subject. Make sure that listing agent's done their job. Most likely, if the property is sat on the market for several days, the price is probably too high and they need to come off their price, or they've done a price adjustment and they're basically looking for that sweet spot, what we call the sweet spot, where we get buyers to actually offer on the property. So look at and do a CMA, and you'll probably find where that sweet spot needs to be by just looking at the sold comparables in the last, I would only look back in the last 60 days to see if you can find comparable properties. You most likely will find them because the market is starting to get better. Understand how to present the true analysis, objective versus subjective. We go into detail in my advanced CMA class on how to adjust the comparables. And then you need to present the CMA, or what are the real comparables, to the seller in the format that they need it and the timing that they need it. So a CMA can be used, it's kind of like this, I don't know, it's like, Shannon, when we talk about marketing, I want to do better marketing. It's such a very broad term that I think you need to isolate that and kind of figure out, like, what are you going to provide to your sellers, and how and when are you going to provide that? And how long does it take you to put that out there? And what are you going to actually push out to them? And I'd say that the biggest thing I've learned over the years is just to build rapport along the way and not give the full, the full ball and, everything, the full market proposal, unless they're willing to commit and willing to do and get their home properly positioned and priced on the market. And until that happens, we're just talking. I mean, Shannon, if we're talking today and you're not willing to put your house on the market until the springtime, and it's almost like summertime, some of these people, then we need to work out and ask more questions to determine what is making them make that decision. What questions can we ask? We almost have to roll it back and ask better questions to really truly find out what their timing is in order for you to do a full analysis. Because honestly, right now, the pricing is changing on a week-to-week basis, you guys. That's what I'm seeing. So if you're not going to be pricing until summertime, they're not going to go on the market until summertime, until the kids are out of school. You need to develop a relationship where you're watching that market and maybe providing them with some quick and dirty, telling them, hey, Zillow says your home's worth this, and the CMA that I'm running is pulling this. Maybe you're going to have to do that every, once a month until they're ready to go. But you got to build enough rapport so that they trust you more than that computer. Shannon, did you want to show them anything else there? Did I cover?
No, not here, but I know we've got some goodies here on the next slide.
These are some good ones that I wanted to include, to keep that relationship. A lot of times sellers are like, okay, Rachelle, I understand. I don't want to price my home until I'm ready to go, like at least 30 days before, right? That's kind of what we tell sellers, about 30 days before you actually want to go on the market, then we'll do a full market analysis. And even after I do the full market analysis, it still could change. We don't know what the summer is going to look like. So you kind of talk through that. But in the meantime, let me come out to your house. Let me give you some advice on what improvements add value, what things don't, so that you're not going to over improve the property or maybe not do some things that will be really helpful when we do go on the market. So I often will go out and do what we call a quick, just walk and talk. Quick walk through the property and give them the sheet, and also give them a range of like where the property is kind of at right now, so that they can see if that's going to work for them. But I mean, certainly I'm not going to go to all of that great market. I mean, 5 steps, you guys, it's going to take me several hours to put together. I'm not going to do that unless they're actually going to list with me. But if I'm going to do a quick, quick and dirty analysis and give them a range and just kind of build a rapport, this sheet is really, really cool. And it is in our CMA, or not our CMA, our market buyer, our seller presentation. It is in the seller presentation, and it also is in a downloadable format that you can just go out the door and use. Again, this kind of gives them kind of a range of what the low and what the high adjustment would be, and what value, a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel would do. And you've used this too, Shannon, correct? This has been helpful.
I use it more as a tool where it's like, let's talk about your timing, and depending on that timing, is it worth it to do the kitchen remodel? I mean, it can take X, Y, and Z time. Does that fit within your time constraint and within your budget? So right. It's using the sheet to kind of really talk about timing, because some contractors are booked out a long time. Yep. And if they're planning on moving out of state, or they're planning on moving for another job somewhere else, sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's like, let's get it on the market now. Let's just do an adjustment for the fact that yours is not upgraded in the way that your comparables are. Let's get it on the market right away. Yeah.
And not wait, because we're trying to figure this, if we keep kicking it down, we're going to miss the market window, right? We're going to miss. Yeah. And so this helps kind of point them in the right direction and tells them, okay, if I do the kitchen remodel, it might just be a $20,000 adjustment. So I'm not getting the full value of a full kitchen remodel, but I may, not have the hassle of having those contractors come and go out of my house.
Right.
Converting basements, we get questions like that a lot. So this kind of gives you a point of reference of what you can tell a client. And the source came from the Home Remodeling Magazine. So these are best estimates for typical situations. So again, this is not like an end all be all, but it does point the client in the right direction. Let's go to the next one. That's next. This is something that a lot of you are like, I just don't have trouble, Rachelle. I can do a CMA. I'm pretty good at like making, confining my comparable properties, but I have a hard time thinking like an appraiser. This type of sheet, this adjust your CMA, common factors to consider. This is also a downloadable. We have updated it. It has increased as prices have increased. It also has increased when I've talked to appraisers in the various areas. You may have to, if you're trying to figure out how do I adjust for square footage, for example, you may have to talk to an appraiser in the area to get your actual value. But I can tell you, for example, in Spokane, it's $35 to $40 a square foot. To compare one property to another. Again, this is just if one property has 400 square feet bigger than say another property, how to adjust for that. There is a way to adjust for that very easily with our common factors to consider sheet that we have. So if you do need some help with this, or want me to take a look at your adjustments, or maybe it's been several years since you did the adjustments, go ahead and put your CMA together or your market proposal. put it all together. So before you present it, I'm happy. Candace is happy. Shannon's happy. We've been all trained on how to look at the full market proposal and make the appropriate adjustments. And if you're struggling with it or you haven't done, it does take a long time. Shannon took longer. Now she can do it pretty quick. She's a whiz kid, typing it into her little calculator and coming up with the square footage adjustments. But these are all potential adjustments that an appraiser would do that you also can do when you're comparing those properties. So you can download that from our resource website. Is that right, Shannon? That's where
they're on our Best Choice Realty Homes member site. You should be able to download all sorts of different other type of listing tools as well. But I think the key from at least tonight is it takes time. And I think sellers think it's going to just be quick because that's what they're getting with the online generators. But to do a full proposal like that, it takes time. And I think sharing with the seller that it takes you that amount of time, it gives them a better value on the services that you're providing.
Well, in the end, they want to make more money, right?
Yeah.
They're watching the inflationary numbers going up and they're like, how can I, and if I hire in a true professional, I honestly am very confident in saying this. I have saved sellers thousands of dollars by having a true professional run it through our system and doing the type of work that it takes to get the pricing set right from the get-go. Have I made mistakes? Sure. I've made mistakes. So have all of you. But I would say that we will make less mistakes than, say, a computer that's going to spit out a number and not have taken into account some very important things that are important to that seller. So it's really kind of working with the data and then properly communicating that data to your seller that makes for a very productive or successful listing agent. And we're going to train you guys on some of these parts. It's not something that I intended to train you in 30 minutes, but hopefully you got some tips tonight that will help you in coming up with some better tools or maybe just a different way of looking at something. And we certainly have people that are willing to take your call. We have some of the best agents around. I've sat in some masterminds and it's awesome because some of the questions that have come up recently in the mastermind groups that I've sat in, it's like, I think Candace had one, she's like, I am just struggling. I don't know what it is. Is it the smell? I mean, what is it? I've done open houses. I've done everything. Why is my listing not selling? And sometimes we set a price and then we're in the crossfire of all the market changes, right? So sometimes it's not us. Sometimes it's just kind of getting a set of different eyes on it and just rebooting it and repricing and rehaving that conversation and re-energizing that listing in such a way that we do find the buyer. Price definitely has an impact, I will say. It's not always the price, but it's oftentimes is. If you're chasing the market, you need to probably redo and re-engage with maybe another agent to kind of see if you're off base. Candace, did you have anything else to add to that? We had some chats going on. Looks like a lot of people were chatting.
Yeah, we've got some questions on some people about it. If they want official for some sort of divorce situation. I think a lot of CMAs, it comes down to a strategy. I know some agents have taken the route for some listings where they'll just have an appraisal done on the property and they'll list at the appraised value. I mean, there's certain things that you can do depending on the circumstances that might help you, but for most of the situations, these full market proposals is certainly the way to go.
How do you quantify the adjustment? Yeah, the quantification, we have that sheet that's helpful, but it's not, again, it's subjective on some of these things. So you have to know the area and know the marketplace well to make some of those adjustments. And if you don't have the experience or you're new to the business, you may want to have another second set of eyes. And that's what we're here for. We're not going to do this full market proposal for you. I had a few of you call me and say, hey, I'll pay you. I don't have the time to go through and do a full market proposal for you. But I'm certainly willing to look at what you're proposing to your seller and give you like your off base, or it doesn't seem like your range is a little too far off. I'm happy to give you that type of advice. And I know Candace is as well.
Yep. And we had a comment. So previews help provide more objective perspective. And it sure does. I know we were talking about a condo earlier, and my perspective, if you've got a condo complex, why not preview all the properties that are in that unit complex so that when you speak with the seller about pricing, you can say with confidence, I toured them.
Yeah.
I know with confidence that yours is in better condition, or maybe it doesn't have the cabinets or the quartz or whatever it is that they're hem-hawing about. It's like, I've seen your competition, and this is what I would advise at this point. So it lends more credibility, but it also does give that objective perspective. So yeah,
Awesome.
thanks, Deanna. And
I
then
think only-
estimated net proceeds for sure. Yep. Deanne's like, love it for the resells. Bring it on.
HomeBot is just like the automated valuation models. The difference between HomeBot and just say like an AVM or an automated valuation model or a Zestimate. HomeBot is a company that's aligned with Movement Mortgage. So we have a relationship with Movement. If you do want to have that, I know Randy and Deanne are happy to connect the dots. It's $25 a month. It's something that Candace and I use all the time. And it's basically, instead of our clients going to the Zestimate, we have intercepted that by putting them into an automated valuation monthly. Isn't it monthly? I think is what they send, Candace.
It's
Right.
every 2 weeks.
Oh, is it every 2 weeks? Cool. So it's kind of doing that work for you behind the scenes. It is $25 a month for real estate agents at this time. But it's automatically doing that for you on your behalf. So it's keeping that seller tied to you rather than having them go to another automated valuation calculator. They are able to kind of get their valuations. So is it perfect? No. But when the seller is wanting to, get a full market value proposal, they're going to be calling Candace. They're going to be calling me when they want that done. So that's the difference.
Yeah, and another way too, some people have those types of software or AI with their current CRMs. So I know Chime, for instance, that we have with Best Choice has a similar type of aggregator valuator.
It almost looks the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks so similar to HomeBot, but at least it's all integrated as well. So you're kind of keeping everything under the same umbrella. So I'm a big proponent of that, of making sure that we don't have to go to different technology pieces for the same type of service. So
yeah, and Kathy, I'll send you the HomeBot, how to sign up. That's the easy one.
yep. And we got a question from Deanna about where to get net sheets, in terms from the title company. For me, I like the Fidelity brand. So Fidelity, Chicago, Tycor, it's basically the same software, but Chicago Agent One, Tycor Agent One, Fidelity Agent One. Those are the ones that most agents are using, at least here in the Puget Sound area. And I know they've got similar ones over on the east side for North Idaho Title Company as well.
Do all their CMAs first. Yep. They do all their CMAs. It's funny. Yeah, that's if you have those contacts, that's where it's proving very successful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other
Yep.
questions for the good of the matter? We've got a couple more minutes. I'm happy to take. I don't know if I got through all of the questions, Shannon. Hopefully
No,
so.
but I think I'll give two kind of key takeaways I think we've gotten from our recent masterminds. So if you're a listing agent, have you considered turning off the AVMs from your listing? There is a way for you to turn those on and off.
Yep.
If you're wanting help on that, just give me a call afterwards. I can show you how to do that. It's helpful, especially when you're working with sellers that are so narrow and focused on the Zestimate or the Redfin values. It's best just to turn it off for those type of circumstances. So we can talk about that later. Another one that we've gotten from our masterminds is when you provide pricing. I know Rachelle kind of alluded to it today, but some of those top listing agents, they do not discuss pricing at the first appointment.
No.
So they'll say, let's get an alignment in terms of, am I the best person for the job first? And then we can talk about pricing. So I know one of our top agents, she's like, I don't go over pricing on the first appointment. It's my follow-up item after the appointment that I will provide to them the analytics and the data afterwards. So there's many ways to do it. I know that that's one that one agent took from it. There's other agents too that they won't even do a listing appointment until they've got a listing agreement signed. I mean, there's many approaches to do for these types of things, but pricing is important. It's got to be priced right. Especially with the market 6 months ago, it's a different market than it was 6 months ago. So
we are doing some adjustments with some of the CMAs that I'm seeing come through where we are adjusting for the market. So if you're like, gosh, I like this comparable, but this was back in May. can't be used in that one, or we can use that. We just need to adjust it for the market adjustment. And there's a way of doing that. There's a way of figuring out what that calculator needs to be and taking that a proper adjustment. And we seem to be pretty successful with that. Appraisers have been appreciative of us taking that approach as well. So if you have a tricky one, that's where you probably want to reach out and see if we can get that factor.
And call the pendings. I think I can't emphasize that enough. I called one today for a CMA I was helping with and called the pending agents, and gosh, I'm glad I did, because it turns out that they did not sell for list price. It was under list price. And then the other one sold for over. So it's like, call them, and you'd be surprised what some of those agents will tell you and how it will affect your own valuation as well.
Yeah, because that affected it by 15 grand, wasn't it? On the one that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and for this particular client, that's huge. That's life-changing to have $15,000 more. So take the time,
Okay. Candace, anything else from you?
That was it. Spend the extra time, call the other agents, find out the pending, even some of the recent solds, and just ask about the activity. How did this go for you? If it was on the market for 90 days, if it was one that was like 14 days, what was the traffic like? And get an idea of what you should be expecting.
Those are some great questions.
Yeah.
We spout things off like as we're passing. No, we can't. As we bounce. It's really fun to work with people that have this type of mindset where it's like I pick up things too. It's a great question that you ask.
Well, and you can go back to your seller and say, hey, I did this work. I talked to this agent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me with this intel, this information, top secret.
That's not what the estimates do they?
No, those estimates sure don't call those pendings. So
No.
It's another thing that we can do that's of value.
That's great. Well, hopefully this was helpful, you guys. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy week. Looking forward to next Monday. We are going to be taking a bye next Monday. It's President's Day. It should be a very busy weekend for you. If it's not, it's because you probably need to get back to the basics and start calling and working your database or your sphere or your sources of business, because there's a lot of people out buying and selling right now. If you are not busy, I'm sure you need to probably reach out and talk to Candace and figure out where you can spend some time, because there's plenty of opportunity. So we're going to take a break next Monday, but we'll come back the following Monday with more training that's related around some of the contracts and also around some prospecting tips that are working well.
And we've
So
got
looking
some
forward to
marketing
it.
stuff too. So stay
Yes.
tuned for those.
I know. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, you guys.
See you
Thanks,
later.
all. Have a good night.